Hi, it's me, Ahi from Geek Empowered, and today we're going to talk through your domain name and hosting when you are building a website. So, this is the number one problem people run into. They underestimate how complex it can be when it comes to getting a domain name and setting up your hosting with WordPress. The first problem they run into is choosing a domain name that's already taken. Usually, if it's a more common domain, it's already taken. So, you have to think of very unique domain names or a combination of different words to grab a domain name that is available. Two, cheaper web hosting companies often provide bad performance. We usually tend to go for cheaper providers when it comes to hosting, but then you end up getting a lot more headache and a lot more fees in the long run. And speaking of fees, that's the third problem people run into. When it comes to limited resources, and when your website grows, you need more resources, you have to pay a lot of unexpected fees when it comes to your hosting, especially around storage and performance. So, first, choosing a domain name. It can be very time consuming if you don't take the time to research. So, first, check if your preferred name is available. If you have something like GoDaddy.com, that's going to be taken. If you have something like buyshoes.com, that's probably going to be taken. You want to think of different unique names and research those names. Go in Google and search these names to see if a website pops up. And if a website does not pop up, that doesn't mean that that domain is not taken. Sometimes people buy domains and they hold on to those domains to sell them as a business. So sometimes you might see domains as little as $12 per year to own that domain, all the way up to $30,000 per purchase for that domain. And then after that, it becomes cheaper. But it is a business for people to buy common named domains and sell it off for way more than originally priced for. Also, if you do have a name that's similar to another domain, also consider other extensions. The most common is .com, but you can also use .tech, .info, .net, and .org. Also, please remember to choose something short, memorable, and easy to spell. You don't want to have a super complex domain name that nobody can remember or spell correctly because it won't direct people to your website. It will take people to another place that they weren't meant to go to. Now, let's talk self hosting versus WordPress packages, the pros and cons of each. So, for self hosted, you have more control and customization on what you can do with your hosting. You need to be able to handle your updates and security. So, you need to know what you're doing in terms of making sure your website is the most up to date that it can be and that all security measures are being taken. Also, it's cheaper in the long term because you're doing everything yourself. It is much cheaper to have a self hosted website. Now, let's talk about WordPress packages. It is a quicker setup, is way quicker to do a WordPress package. And take note, with self hosting, you can install WordPress onto a self hosted website. But with the WordPress package, you could go to directly to WordPress.com and literally spin up a WordPress website. So it's really quick. There's limited customizations and control. If you do use the WordPress.com option, you are going to be limited on what you can do. There is built in security and updates. So you don't have to worry about security or the updates because that is being handled by somebody else. However, because it is being managed by someone else, is more expensive in the long term. So here are some features you should look for in hosting providers. One, the hosting provider should specialize in WordPress hosting. This is a big one. It does take a lot of complexity and a lot of steps to install WordPress onto your hosting. Hosting just hosts your website, but in order for you to create that website, you need a CMS. WordPress is the CMS. That has to be installed on your hosting. So if you have a provider that specialize in WordPress hosting and they do the one-click install, go for it. It will save you so much time and so much stress. Also, the hosting provider should have SSD storage and CDN for performance. So your SSD are more along the lines of the hard drive that's used for your web servers. And CDNs are the network of distributed servers that that are cached copies of the website files. So like you can select where to put your website, like what server to use for your website. And that is important because if you are living in Florida and your server is in California, it impacts your performance of your website. So you want to be aware of those things. And if you have questions around them, ask. Go in the chat, the little bot that they have in the bottom right corner. Go in there and ask about SSD and CDNs and see how that works for that hosting provider. Also, automatic plugin and theme updates. Automatic is way better than doing it yourself. So for WordPress, you can work with many different themes, and those are provided by developers, or you can purchase them from third-party websites, or you can even make them yourself. But these themes can be updated. It has new features. It has new ways that you can edit your website. It has new security features. You have to be aware of those things and how often that theme updates, so that way you don't have to worry about it for your website. Also, the plugins are also created by developers. So you want to also be aware of how often those plugins are updated and whether you need to do it or somebody else can do it, or they can be automatic. Also, when it comes to your hosting provider, a easy WordPress install and site transfer. If it's easy for you to install WordPress onto your hosting, that is great. It's even better if it's easy to transfer your websites. So I have ran into so many issues where we had to transfer a website from one platform to another, or from one hosting provider to another hosting provider. You never know what you'll run into when you're growing your business. So to know how that works ahead of time will save you so much time, energy, and headaches in the long run. Also, a reasonable uptime, an SLA of 99.95% or more. This is big. So for WordPress, I use Jetpack to know when my website goes down. I get an alert in my email that says that my website is down, just so I can know and I can contact people or make an announcement that the website is down. And it happens. It happens no matter what hosting provider you go to. You need to have that protocol in place and understand what their SLA percentage is, so that way you could do the proper things if your website does go down. Also, free daily backups. So a lot of people don't back up their website. It is very important to back up your website just in case your site goes down and never comes back up. You want to make sure that you have those files so that way you can spin up another WordPress website somewhere else. So when it comes to WordPress and finding a hosting provider, there are many, many, many places you can go to, probably hundreds of hosting providers that you can go to get a WordPress website. Here are some of the more familiar ones. Bluehost. Bluehost is pretty decent. I've used that in the past. GoDaddy. A lot of my clients go to GoDaddy. A lot of my clients go to GoDaddy, and it's pretty good to use. SiteGround is pretty decent too. I hate pronouncing this one. Ionis, Onus, Ionis. I know I'm saying it wrong. I have used them in the past. I have no clue how to pronounce it, but they are a pretty decent provider too. Namecheap is what I use right now. I use Namecheap. I will give you this caveat: dealing with a SSL. This is also important with your hosting. I should have added this to the previous slide. Understanding how the SSL works, because this will determine whether or not your website will even show up because of security reasons. So, Namecheap, it's a little bit of work to get the SSL up, but it's a pretty decent hosting provider. And WP Engine is really, really great. They specialize in all things WordPress. Here are some important factors when it comes to choosing your hosting provider: the price and your budget. You have to pay for hosting every month. Every month you have to pay to keep your website hosted on a server. Also, the server location. Again, if you're living in Florida, your server is in California, you're going to run into some issues. So, you want to understand where those servers are so that way your performance of your website won't be impacted. Also, the reliability and uptime. You want to make sure your website stays up and that it's not being taken down every day. I had a hosting provider in the past where literally every other day it was being taken down, not due to anything I was doing, but because of where my servers were and what was happening with my files, it was always down. Also, disk space and bandwidth needs. Usually people start off small, but you will be surprised how quickly a blog will grow on your website. You will be surprised. Memberships. If you have a membership site, your website will take up memory space, bandwidth, all the things. So you need to be very aware of that. And speed and performance issues. This is also really big. You don't want your website loading very slowly, especially if it's a very simple website. You want to make sure those features are accurate when it comes to your hosting provider. So that's all for this video when it comes to your domain and hosting for your WordPress website. If you need more help, make sure you visit us at geekempower.com. Sign up for our 1 million strong tech journeys and helping 1 million people by 2030 start their tech journey. So sign up and subscribe to our newsletter. Also, you can email me at ahi@geekempower.com. Thanks. Bye.